3 years ago, I couldn't buy a $5 latte without a pit in my stomach, wondering if he'd question the charge. Today, I'm sitting in a bustling Seattle cafe, my phone buzzing with David's frantic texts, begging me to undo what I've done. I've frozen his world, his accounts, his assets, his precious offshore millions, and I'm not answering. I'm Emily Harper, a 38-year-old CFO at Puget Sound Medical Center, the kind of woman who balances multi-million-dollar budgets by day, but once lived on a $1,000 monthly allowance from her own salary. It's hard to believe I let it get that far, that I let David, my charming tech-mogul husband, cage me like that. But here I am, sipping an overpriced cappuccino, watching his name flash on my screen for the 20th time, feeling a strange mix of triumph and grief. This isn't just about money. It's about the years I spent shrinking myself, apologizing for wanting a new dress, justifying a lunch with friends. David didn't just control our bank accounts, he controlled me, my choices, my dignity. 8 years of marriage, and it's come to this. A quiet rebellion in a corner booth with the Puget Sound rain streaking the windows and my heart pounding with the weight of what I've done. I wasn't always this bold. When we met at a hospital fundraiser, I was proud, independent, with a corner office and a credit score that made bankers smile. David was magnetic, promising me the world with his tech empire and that disarming grin. We were equals, or so I thought, building a life in our sleek Redmond home, dreaming of kids and holiday parties. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, he started pulling the strings, first with helpful suggestions, then with locked accounts I couldn't touch. Now, I've turned the tables. I've hacked into his financial kingdom, locked him out of everything he thought he owned, and he's scrambling. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. How did I go from a woman who checked with her husband to buy groceries to one who brought his empire to its knees? Stick around, because this story is about to get wild. I met David at a hospital fundraiser in downtown Seattle, the kind of event where champagne flows and eagles sparkle brighter than the chandeliers. He was 35, a tech entrepreneur whose startup was making waves in AI logistics. And I was 30, newly promoted to CFO, commanding respect in a room full of suits. His laugh cut through the noise, and when he introduced himself, his hand lingered on mine just long enough to make my pulse skip. We were electric from the start. David swept me into his world, dinners at Cunliffe with views of the city skyline, weekend getaways to Whidbey Island in his Tesla, late-night talks about our dreams under the stars. He called me his secret weapon, dazzled by my knack for numbers, and I fell hard for his ambition, his vision. 6 months later, he proposed on a rooftop overlooking Lake Union, the ring catching the city lights like a promise of forever. Our wedding was a dream. 200 guests at a vineyard in Woodinville, my dress a cascade of lace. Our honeymoon was a blur of Santorini sunsets. We settled into a sleek Redmond home, all glass and cedar, with a joint account for mortgage and utilities, our incomes pooled proportionally. David earned more, so he contributed more, and it felt fair, modern, like the partnership I'd always wanted. But the cracks started small, so subtle I dismissed them as quirks. David would tease me about my fancy CFO tastes when I bought a $200 blouse for a board meeting. "You're sure you need another one, Em?" he'd say, his smile playful but pointed. I'd laugh, thinking he was just being frugal, not seeing the seed of control being planted. Then came the suggestions. "You're so busy at work," he said one night, pouring me wine in our minimalist kitchen. "Why don't I handle the bills? One less thing for you to stress about." I was swamped, negotiating a $50 million hospital expansion, so I agreed, grateful for the relief. He promised full transparency, and I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the man who still left love notes on my nightstand. But transparency faded. I'd log into our joint account to find the password changed. "Oh, I updated it for security," David would say, waving it off. "I'll send you the new one." Sometimes he did. Often he forgot. I stopped checking as regularly, telling myself it was fine, that he was just organized. My salary still flowed into our shared account, and I had a personal card for small expenses. What was there to worry about? Then came the comments, always wrapped in charm. "Women aren't wired for finance like men are," he'd joke, explaining some crypto investment I hadn't asked about. "It's just biology, Em. Let me handle the big stuff." I'd bristle, but bite my tongue, reminding myself of my master's degree, my perfect credit, my career. I wasn't most women, he'd say, which somehow felt like a compliment and a slight all at once. The shift was so gradual, I barely noticed my world shrinking. David started questioning my outings. $40 for drinks with colleagues was extravagant. $100 for a charity gala ticket, unnecessary. I justify every purchase, feeling like a kid asking for allowance. My friends noticed me pulling back, declining happy hours, citing work. But it wasn't work. It was David's subtle disapproval. His sighs when I mentioned plans, his, "You don't need them, Em, you've got me." The real blow came 2 years in, when we bought our dream home, a modern masterpiece with a view of Mount Rainier. The mortgage was in both our names, a new joint account set up for household expenses. I felt so adult signing those papers, imagining our future kids running through the open-plan living room. But David had other plans. "Let's streamline," he said one evening, showing me a banking app. "I've set up a new primary account. Your paycheck will go there directly. It's more efficient." I hesitated, a flicker of unease in my chest. "Will I have access?" I asked. He looked surprised, almost offended. "Of course, Em, it's just logistics." But when I asked for details, he'd dodge. Paperwork wasn't ready, or he'd show me later. Weeks passed, and I noticed my paycheck wasn't hitting my personal account. HR confirmed they'd changed my direct deposit per a form with my signature. A signature I never gave. I confronted David, my voice shaking. "Did you forge my signature?" He was calm, too calm, pulling out his phone to show me the new account. "It's all here, Em. Your money, our investments. I thought we discussed this." He set up a profile for me with a $1,000 monthly limit, calling it temporary for bankrolls. I pushed back, but he sighed. "You're being dramatic. This is for our future." The humiliation grew. I'd ask for $300 for a work conference, and he'd counter with $150, saying, "That's plenty." I stopped buying lunch, canceled my yoga classes, let my hair appointments lapse. My 6-figure salary was a mirage, locked in accounts I couldn't touch. The worst was a work trip to Portland, and when my card was declined at a hotel bar in front of colleagues, I laughed it off, mumbling about a bank glitch, but inside I burned with shame. David's monitoring tightened. He installed budgeting apps, questioning every $20 drugstore run. "Another Starbucks, Em?" he'd say, eyeing a $4 charge like I'd bought a yacht. I started hiding small purchases, using cash I'd stashed from grocery budgets, then felt guilty for sneaking. My friends faded further. How could I explain I couldn't afford a $30 dinner? My world was shrinking to our house, my job, and David's rules. I was Emily Harper, CFO, a woman who once negotiated with CEOs, now terrified to buy tampons without permission. Something was breaking inside me, but I didn't know how to name it yet. I told myself it was temporary, that David was just protective, that our marriage was still salvageable. But deep down, a voice was whispering, "This isn't love. This is control." The moment I realized something was deeply wrong came on a rainy Tuesday in March, during a routine stop at a Rite Aid near the hospital. I'd grabbed cold medicine and a few essentials, my mind on a looming budget deadline. At the checkout, my cart was declined. I tried again, heat creeping up my neck as the cashier gave me a sympathetic look. "Maybe another card," she suggested, the line behind me shifting impatiently. I fumbled for my backup card, but it was declined too.
My face burned as I mumbled an apology, leaving the items on the counter and hurrying to my car. In the parking lot, I checked my banking app. Both accounts showed access denied. My hands shook as I called David, rain drumming on the windshield. "Something's wrong with our accounts," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They declined at Rite Aid." His response was ice cold, matter of fact. "Nothing's wrong, Em. I restructured our finances yesterday. I was going to tell you tonight." I gripped the steering wheel, my breath shallow. "Restructured how?" I asked. "I've consolidated everything to protect our assets," he said, as if explaining a software update. "You were spending too impulsively. I've set up a new card for you with a $1,000 limit. It'll be there tomorrow." I was stunned, my voice barely a whisper. "David, that was for cold medicine. My paycheck goes into those accounts." He cut me off. "Our money, Em. We're married. I'm better at managing it, so this makes sense." He hung up, leaving me staring at my phone, the reality sinking in. My husband had locked me out of my own money. That night, I drove home in a fog, replaying his words. At our Redmond house, David was in his home office, surrounded by monitors and financial charts. He smiled as I entered, gesturing to a spreadsheet. "Look, Em, here's the new system. All our accounts streamlined." I scanned the papers. My name was gone from our joint accounts. My paycheck redirected to an account in his name only. Investment portfolios, property deeds, even a savings account I'd started before we met, all under his control. "This is illegal," I said, my voice trembling. "You can't remove me without my consent." His smile tightened. "Actually, I can. Most accounts were in my name originally. You were just a secondary holder." It wasn't true, but I was too shocked to argue. "What about my salary?" I pressed. He leaned back, patronizing. "I'm not taking it, Em. I'm protecting our future. You'll have what you need, but no more reckless spending." He slid a budget across the desk. $400 for groceries, $100 for personal care, $50 for miscellaneous. My personal spending was capped at $150 a month, less than I spent on gas. "If you need more, we'll talk," he said, as if I were a child. The next day, he handed me a new card with a $1,000 limit, emphasizing it was for household expenses he'd monitor.
The weeks that followed were a masterclass in humiliation. I called our bank only to learn David had changed all access codes and security questions. Without his approval, I couldn't even view my own earnings. I tried visiting a branch, but without documents he kept locked in his office, I was powerless. My world shrank to survival mode, packing lunches, skipping coffee runs, declining every invitation that required money. The psychological toll was brutal. I'd lie awake at nights, replaying every purchase I'd ever made, searching for proof I was the impulsive spender David claimed. Insomnia took hold, my appetite faded, and dark circles bloomed under my eyes. Colleagues noticed, asking if I was okay. "Just stressed with work," I'd lie, the shame too heavy to confess. How could I, a CFO managing millions, admit I couldn't buy a $10 sandwich without permission? In quiet moments, I started researching. Late at night in my hospital office, I typed "spouse controls money" into Google. The term financial abuse appeared, and reading its definition was like staring into a mirror. Controlling accounts, limiting spending, requiring purchase justification, it was all there, every box checked. One article said, "Financial abuse traps victims by eroding their freedom." I wasn't imagining it. This was real. I found our hospital's employee assistance program and booked 6 confidential therapy sessions with Dr. Lisa Nguyen.
In her calm office, I poured out my story, the declined cards, the forged signature, the budget that choked me. "This is financial abuse," she confirmed gently. "It's about control, not money." I broke down. The validation, both relieving and devastating. Why didn't I see it? I'm not weak. I run a hospital's finances. Dr. Nguyen's words stayed with me. Abusers exploit trust, not weakness. You're here, naming it. That's strength. She helped me unravel the shame, the self-blame, showing me how David's control had built so gradually I hadn't noticed the cage forming. Each session peeled back layers of denial, revealing red flags I'd ignored. His early jokes about women and money, his insistence on managing our accounts, his subtle isolation of my friends. The anger came slowly, not a wildfire, but a steady flame. I was angry at David for betraying me, at myself for adapting to his rules, at a world that made this abuse so easy to hide. In our final session, Dr. Nguyen asked, "What do you want, Emily?" I didn't hesitate. "I want my life back, my money, my choices, my freedom." She nodded. "Then let's figure out how to get there." As I left her office, a plan was forming. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew one thing. I was done being David's prisoner. The woman who walked out that day was still wounded, still scared, but she was awake. David thought he'd broken me, but he underestimated one thing: my ability to fight back. And I was just getting started.
The cage tightened around me so gradually, I didn't feel the bars until they were locked. David's restructuring of our finances wasn't just a policy change, it was a chokehold. By spring, my six-figure salary as Puget Sound Medical Center CFO vanished into accounts I couldn't access, and I was living on a $1,000 monthly credit card he monitored like a hawk. Every purchase, from groceries to gas, became a negotiation, a humiliation, a reminder that I wasn't free. It started with small erosions. David would call during my lunch break, his tone casual but probing. "Saw a $25 charge at Whole Foods, Em. What was that for?" I'd explain. Almond milk, avocados, nothing extravagant. But his size made me feel reckless. I started memorizing receipts, anticipating his questions, my confidence eroding with every interrogation. My personal account, once a safety net, was drained, redirected to his primary account without my consent. The first public blow came during a work trip to San Francisco for a healthcare finance conference. I was presenting on hospital cost efficiencies, a star in my field, surrounded by peers who respected me. After my session, a group invited me to a trendy Mission District bar to celebrate. Laughing, I offered to cover the first round. 6 drinks, maybe $80. My card was declined. The bartender ran it twice, shaking his head. My colleagues exchanged awkward glances as I fumbled for cash I didn't have, mumbling about a bank glitch. I slipped away to the bathroom, my face burning, and called David. "I'm in San Francisco," I said, my voice low. "My card was declined at a bar. Can you transfer some money?" His response was a lecture. "A bar, Em? You're supposed to be working, not partying. Did you get a second quote on those drinks?" I stood in that grimy stall, a CFO in a tailored blazer, begging my husband for $80 like a teenager. He transferred $50, enough for 1 drink and a tip, and I returned to the cable, forcing a smile. My colleagues pretended not to notice, but the shame clung to me like damp clothes. Back home, the monitoring intensified. David installed a budgeting app that pinged his phone with every transaction. A $15 pharmacy run triggered a text. "What did you need at CVS?" A $4 coffee prompted a call. "Another latte, Em? We're saving for the future." I stopped going to Starbucks, started brewing Folgers at home, but even that wasn't enough. He questioned a $30 grocery overage, accusing me of slipping. I'd argue it was for household essentials, but he'd counter, "We need to align on priorities." My priorities, it seemed, didn't matter.
My social life crumbled. I declined happy hours, citing deadlines, but the truth was, I couldn't afford a $12 cocktail. My best friend, Mia, offered to treat me to dinner, but I refused, too ashamed to admit I couldn't reciprocate. David had already soured on Mia, calling her too opinionated after she questioned why I always checked with him before plans. Slowly, I stopped calling her. My isolation deepened. My world was work, home, and David's rules.
The lowest moment came when my car broke down on I-5 halfway to a hospital board meeting. The tow truck driver quoted $600 for a new alternator. I swiped my car at his garage only for it to be declined. Standing in that oily office, I called David, my voice shaking. My car is dead. I need $600 to fix it. He grilled me. Had I gotten a second opinion? Was the mechanic trustworthy? Could I take the bus instead? By the time he transferred $500, insisting I make it work, I felt 2 inches tall, the mechanic's pitying glance burning into me. I adapted, shrinking my life to fit the budget. I canceled my gym membership, let my highlights grow out, packed PB&J for lunch. My wardrobe, once a point of pride, became a time capsule of pre-David confidence. Suits from when I felt like me. I hid small purchases, using cash from grocery budgets for tampons or a rare coffee, then lied about it, hating the deceit but craving the tiny rebellion. Each lie felt like a betrayal of myself, proof I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. David's gender jabs grew bolder. "Finance is a man's game, Em," he'd say, laughing as he scrolled through stock charts. "You're great with hospital budgets, but leave the real money to me." I'd point to my track record. 800 credit score, 0 debt before him, but he'd dismiss it. "You're an exception, but even you need guidance." His compliments always carried a barb, tipping away at my self-worth. The psychological toll was relentless. I developed insomnia, lying awake at 3 a.m., replaying his critiques, questioning my competence. Was I bad with money? The evidence said no. I built a career on financial precision, but his voice drowned out reason. My appetite faded, my clothes hung loose, and colleagues asked if I was sick. "Just a tough project," I'd lie, the weight of my secret crushing me. I stopped fighting back. When David gave me a $200 bonus for good budgeting, I thanked him, the words acid in my mouth. When he vetoed a $50 donation to a cancer charity, I nodded, swallowing my protest. I was Emily Harper, a woman who once commanded boardrooms, now afraid to buy socks without permission. The realization hit me like a slow-motion crash. This wasn't a marriage. It was a prison, but I wasn't ready to escape. Not yet. I told myself it was temporary, that David loved me, that I could fix this. Deep down, I knew I was lying, but the truth was too terrifying to face. The moment I named what was happening to me felt like waking up from a nightmare, only to realize the monster was real. It was a gray April evening, and I was at a Walgreens near the hospital, picking up antibiotics for a sinus infection. My cart held $22 worth of essentials, but at the register, my card was declined. Again. The cashier, a teenager with purple nail polish, tried twice before shrugging. "System's down," she offered, but I knew better. I left the items, my cheeks flaming, and sat in my car, rain blurring the windshield, checking my banking app. "Access denied" glared back at me, same as before. I called David, my voice tight. My card didn't work at Walgreens. I needed medicine. His tone was infuriatingly calm. "I tightened the limit, Em. You've been hitting it too fast. I'll add $50 tomorrow." I snapped, "I earn $180,000 a year, David. This is my money." He chuckled, patronizing. "Our money, babe. You're not great at managing it, so I'm helping." He hung up, and I sat there, trembling, the word helping echoing like a slap. That night,
Alone in our guest bedroom, where I'd started sleeping to avoid David's late-night work calls, I opened my laptop and typed, "Husband controls all money," into a private browser. The results hit like a gut punch. Financial abuse, one site declared, listing signs that mirrored my life, restricting account access, requiring purchase justifications, redirecting income without consent. Another article described it as a tactic to entrap partners, stripping their autonomy. I read until 2 a.m., tears streaming, each paragraph validating my pain but shattering my denial. This wasn't just control, it was abuse. The next day, I booked a session through our hospital's confidential employee assistance program with Dr. Lisa Nguyen, a therapist whose calm presence felt like a lifeline. In her office, surrounded by succulents and soft lighting, I spilled everything. The declined cards, the forged signature, the $1,000 limit that choked me. "I feel like I'm losing myself," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I'm a CFO. How did I let this happen?" Dr. Nguyen leaned forward, her eyes kind but unflinching. "This is financial abuse, Emily. It's not about your strength or intelligence. Abusers manipulate trust, exploiting love to build control." Her words were a balm and a blade, validating my reality but forcing me to face it. "It's designed to make you doubt yourself," she added, "but you're here, naming it. That's where your power starts." Over 6 sessions, Dr. Nguyen helped me untangle the shame. I'd been asking, "What's wrong with me?" but she reframed it. "What did he do to make you feel this way?" We traced David's tactics, his jokes about women and money, his isolating me from Mia, his forging my signature. Each was a calculated step, not my failure. "Abuse thrives in silence," she said. "Naming it breaks its hold." The therapy session sparked a discovery that changed everything. One night, unable to sleep, I used David's old iPad, still linked to his iCloud, to check his email. A risky move, but desperation trumped caution. Buried in a folder labeled taxes, I found correspondence with the Cayman Islands Bank referencing an offshore account with a $4.2 million balance. My heart raced as I read further. The account was in David's name only, opened 2 years ago, with transfers from our joint investments I never approved. He'd been siphoning our money, hiding millions while I begged for $50. The betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just control, it was theft. A secret empire built behind my back. I took screenshots, my hands shaking, and saved them to an encrypted folder on my work computer. The discovery fueled a new emotion, anger, cold and sharp, cutting through my shame. David wasn't just locking me out, he was profiting from my ignorance, living a double life funded by our marriage. Dr. Nguyen helped me channel that anger. She said, "Anger is a signal. It's your mind saying, enough. What do you want to do with it?" I thought of the offshore account, the declined cards, the years of shrinking myself. "I want to fight back," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. "I want my money, my freedom, my life." She nodded, practical now. "Start small, protect yourself, gather information, but don't confront him yet. He'll tighten his grip." Following her advice, I opened a secret account at a credit union in Bellevue, using my work address to avoid mail at home. I told HR I was starting a healthcare FSA, diverting $75 per pay period, small enough to fly under David's radar. Each deposit felt like a brick in a new foundation, a tiny rebellion against his cage. I also began documenting everything. While David was at his tech startup, I searched his home office, photographing bank statements, investment records, and a property deed for a condo in Seattle I didn't know we owned. I found a credit card in his name with $20,000 in charges for restaurants and hotels on dates he'd claimed to be at conferences. The pieces hinted at a bigger secret. Maybe an affair, maybe worse. But I wasn't ready to dig deeper. Not yet. The anger grew, but so did my fear. What if David caught me? His paranoia was increasing. He'd started double-checking his phone, changing passwords weekly. I played the compliant wife, thanking him for grocery money, nodding at his budgets, swallowing my pride to keep him unsuspecting. Each thank you burned, but it bought me time. By our final session, Dr. Nguyen asked, "Where do you see yourself in 6 months?" I paused, then said, "Free, with my own money, my own choices, and David out of my life." She smiled. "You're already on your way. Keep building your plan and don't underestimate yourself." As I left her office, the Seattle rain felt cleansing, not oppressive. I was still trapped, but I wasn't helpless. I had a name for my pain, a secret account, and a growing file of evidence. David thought he'd won, but I was rewriting the game. The fight was coming, and I'd be ready. With the truth of David's financial abuse laid bare, I became a woman on a mission, moving in the shadows of my own marriage. The anger Dr. Nguyen helped me harness wasn't loud or reckless. It was a quiet, surgical resolve, guiding every step of what I called my escape blueprint. I knew confronting David too soon would backfire. He'd lock down his accounts tighter, or worse, turn his control into something uglier. So I played the part of the obedient wife while building my arsenal in secret, each move a step toward freedom. My first task was gathering intelligence. While David was at his tech startup, I turned our Redmond home office into a covert operation hub. I'd wait until he left for his late meetings, then slip into his sleek workspace, heart-pounding, to photograph documents. Bank statements, investment portfolios, even a lease for a Belltown condo I'd never seen. Each snapshot went into an encrypted folder on my work laptop. I found emails confirming the $4.2 million offshore account in the Caymans, with transfers dated back to our third year of marriage. My salary, my bonuses, our joint savings. He'd funneled it all into his hidden empire. The most chilling discovery came from a stack of credit card statements buried in a locked drawer I pried open with a paperclip. Charges for 5-star hotels in Miami, Vegas, and New York. All on weekends David claimed he was at tech conferences. A $3,000 dinner at Le Bernardin. A $7,000 jewelry purchase at Tiffany's. None of it for me. The dates aligned with his business trips with Lauren, his COO, a sharp, ambitious woman who always lingered too close at company events. I'd ignored the signs, chalking her flirtations up to professional admiration. Now the truth was undeniable. David was cheating, funding his affair with our money. I didn't cry. Instead, I took photos of every receipt, my hand steady, the betrayal fueling my focus. This wasn't just leverage, it was a weapon. But I needed more than suspicions to dismantle his control. I started tracking his routines, noting when he checked his email, midnight after I was asleep, where he kept his passwords, a locked phone app, and who he called late at night, often Lauren, from his office line. I set an alarm for 2 a.m. some nights, creeping to the bathroom near his office to overhear snippets of calls, vague mentions of investor concerns and offshore transfers. Each piece built a clearer picture of his double life. To protect my moves, I reconnected with Mia, my college friend, and now a divorce attorney in Tacoma. David had pushed her out years ago, calling her a bad influence after she questioned his control. I met her for lunch at a diner far from Redmond, paying in cash to avoid David's budgeting app. "He's financially abusing you, Em," Mia said, her voice low but firm, after I showed her the offshore account screenshots. "Legally, you're stronger than you think. Washington's a community property state. Half those assets are yours, no matter whose name is on them." Mia outlined my options. Document everything, secure independent funds, and avoid tipping David off until I was ready to strike. She warned that his offshore account could complicate things. Courts might struggle to access it, but my evidence would force transparency in a divorce. "Keep digging," she said. "If he's cheating or hiding assets, that's your leverage." I left the diner with a notebook full of legal terms and a spark of hope. I wasn't alone anymore. Following Mia's advice, I expanded my secret account at the Bellevue Credit Union. I sold a diamond necklace David gave me early in our marriage, claiming I'd lost it, and deposited the $2,000 cash. I took on extra hospital consulting gigs, funneling the $500 stipends directly to my account. By June, I had $4,800, modest, but enough to rent an apartment if I needed to bolt. Each deposit felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a quiet defiance David couldn't touch. I also studied David's digital vulnerabilities. His passwords were lazy, variations of his birth year, our anniversary, or his old Stanford jersey number. One night, while he slept, I used his iPad, still linked to his iCloud, to access his banking app. I didn't transfer anything, just noted account numbers, security questions, and two-factor authentication patterns. His arrogance worked in my favor. He never suspected I'd outsmart him. The riskiest move came when I found a pattern in his tax documents, a task he still trusted me to organize, thinking it beneath him. Large cash withdrawals, $10,000, $15,000, appeared monthly with no receipts, always before his conference trips. Cross-referencing with hotel charges, I confirmed they matched Lauren's travel schedule. Whether it was an affair, gambling, or something shadier, it was a crack in his armor. I compiled a digital folder, emails, receipts, withdrawal records, ready to use if he fought dirty. Maintaining the facade was the hardest part. I smiled when David handed me my $1,000 card, thanked him for managing our future, and nodded at his budgets, each word a lie that burned. He grew complacent, leaving documents out, taking more trips with Lauren, believing he'd broken me. His carelessness was my gain. I photographed a business contract showing he'd misled investors, diverting funds to the offshore account. It wasn't enough to ruin him, but it was enough to scare him. By July, I had a fortress of evidence, $4.2 million offshore, proof of Lauren's affair, and records of his shady dealings. My secret account held $5,300, and Mia had connected me with a divorce lawyer ready to move when I was. I'd researched shelters and rental options, preparing for the worst, but I wasn't ready to act. Not yet. I needed a spark, a moment that would push me from planning to execution. David's control was a ticking bomb, and I was waiting for the right moment to detonate. Little did I know, that moment was racing toward me, faster than I could imagine. The spark that ignited my rebellion came on a sweltering August afternoon, when everything I'd been holding together shattered. I was in a hospital boardroom, presenting next year's budget, when my phone buzzed with a call from Harborview Medical Center. It was about my sister, Claire, my only family since our parents died. She'd been in a car accident on I-90. A drunk driver had T-boned her Prius, leaving her with a shattered pelvis and internal bleeding. "She's in surgery," the doctor said, her voice urgent. "We're doing everything we can, but it's critical." I left the meeting, my heart in my throat, and raced to Harborview, the Seattle traffic a blur. Claire was 34, a music teacher, with a laugh that could light up a room, and the thought of losing her was unbearable. In the ICU waiting room, the surgeon updated me. Claire had survived surgery, but her recovery would be brutal. She needed an experimental nerve treatment to regain leg function, costing $50,000, not covered by her insurance. Without it, she might never walk again. As her only kin, the decision and the bill fell to me. That evening, I sat David down in our sterile Redmond living room, the air thick with tension. "Claire's in bad shape," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "She needs a $50,000 treatment to walk again. I want to pull it from our savings." David leaned back, his expression unreadable, fingers drumming on his knee. "That's rough, Em, but we can't liquidate assets now. We're in a high-yield investment cycle. Pulling out would cost us $200,000 in penalties." I stared, disbelief rising. "This is my sister's life, David. I've seen our accounts. We have millions." His eyes narrowed at my mention of the accounts, but he pressed on, smooth as ever. "It's not that simple. Your salary's tied up in household expenses and our portfolio. Have you looked at Medicaid? There's state aid for cases like this." His tone was clinical, like he was pitching a startup, not dismissing my sister's future. "She needs this now, David," I said, leaning forward. "Medicaid takes months, and it won't cover this treatment. We have the money." He sighed, patronizing. "You're emotional, Em. I get it, but we can't jeopardize our future for your sister's medical bills. Family's important, but so is financial stability." The words landed like a blade. This man, who controlled my six-figure salary, who hid millions offshore, was refusing to help the only family I had left? I stood, my voice low but sharp. "So you're saying no? You won't help Claire?" He spread his hands as if I were unreasonable.
I'm saying we need to be practical. Your sister's not our responsibility. Something snapped inside me. Not my heart, which had been breaking for years, but my last thread of hope that David could be reasoned with. I nodded stiffly and went upstairs, not to cry, but to plan. That night, lying in the guest bedroom, my phone lit up with a notification from David's iPad, still linked to his iCloud. It was an email from Lauren, his COO, sent to his personal account. Can't wait for SF this weekend. Last time was electric. Love, L. Attached was a photo of them at a rooftop bar, her hand on his chest, his smile smug. I froze, the pieces clicking. The hotel charges, the cash withdrawals, the conferences. David wasn't just controlling me, he was betraying me, living a double life with Lauren funded by our money. I took a screenshot, my hands trembling with rage, and watched as the email vanished, deleted remotely when David realized his mistake. But it was too late. The betrayal was the final push, the catalyst I'd been waiting for. Claire's life was on the line, and David was spending our fortune on his mistress. I wasn't just fighting for my freedom anymore. I was fighting for my sister, for justice, for every piece of myself he'd stolen. The next morning, I moved with precision. I emailed my boss requesting 2 weeks of emergency family leave to care for Claire, knowing I'd need time to execute my plan. I packed a small bag, kissed David goodbye as he left for his startup, and drove to a budget motel near Harborview, paying cash to avoid his tracking. Checking in, I felt a strange calm, like the eye of a storm. The woman who'd begged for $50 at Walgreens was gone. In her place was someone new, focused, fearless, ready to burn David's empire to the ground. At the motel, I set up my laptop, pulling out my encrypted folder of evidence, the offshore account statements, Lauren's receipts, the forged signatures. I had his passwords, his security answers, his predictable habits. David was leaving for San Francisco with Lauren tomorrow, giving me a 48-hour window to strike. I called Mia, my lawyer friend, updating her on Claire's accident and Lauren's email. "This is it," she said. "You've got enough to force his hand. Move fast, but cover your tracks." I spent the night mapping my attack. I'd freeze his accounts, redirect my salary, flag his assets for fraud, and use Lauren's affair to ensure he couldn't wiggle free. Every step was legal, leveraging Washington's community property laws, but it was also a declaration of war. I wasn't just reclaiming my money, I was reclaiming my power. As I finalized my checklist, Claire's face flashed in my mind, her laugh, her fight. This was for her, for me, for every moment David thought he'd won. By morning, I was ready. David's flight would leave at noon, and when it did, I'd bring his world crashing down. David's flight to San Francisco with Lauren took off at noon, and as his plane climbed, I launched my attack from a motel room near Harborview, my laptop glowing in the dim light. Months of planning, evidence gathering, and suppressed rage crystallized into this moment. I wasn't just freezing his accounts. I was dismantling the financial empire he'd built on my back, reclaiming every dollar he'd stolen. Claire's life depended on it, and so did my freedom. I started with the VPN to mask my location, a trick I'd learned from our hospital's cybersecurity team. My encrypted folder held everything: account numbers, passwords, screenshots of the $4.2 million offshore account, and proof of Lauren's affair. Beside me, a legal pad listed my targets: joint accounts, credit cards, investments, even the Belltown condo he'd hidden. My hand shook, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally fighting back. First, I hit our joint checking account, the one David had locked me out of a year ago. Using his predictable password, his Stanford jersey number, plus our anniversary, I logged in and transferred $200,000, half the balance, to my Bellevue Credit Union account. I didn't take it all. I wasn't a thief, just claiming my legal share under Washington's community property laws. The confirmation email pinged and I exhaled, the first brick of his cage crumbling. Next were the investment accounts, trickier but critical. Liquidating them would trigger penalties, as David had smugly warned. So I played smarter. I changed the contact info to my work email and phone, ensuring I'd get alerts for any moves he tried. I reset security questions, his mother's maiden name, his first car, answers I'd memorized from months of spying.
For two-factor authentication, I intercepted codes via his iPad, still linked to his phone. Every change left a digital trail, deliberate. I wanted him to know it was me. The credit cards were my masterpiece. David had 6: platinum, airline rewards, business accounts, all tied to our marital assets. I called each issuer, identifying myself as a joint holder with our marriage certificate scanned and ready. "I've noticed suspicious charges," I said, voice calm, professional. "Can you freeze these accounts pending a fraud review?" The reps complied, no questions asked. One by one, David's cards became useless. His lavish lifestyle paused mid-spend. I didn't cancel them. My credit score mattered, but a freeze was enough to trap him. His 3 car leases, a Range Rover, a Tesla, and a vintage Mustang, came next. All were financed through his startup with payments drawn from accounts I now controlled. I called the leasing companies, posing as his CFO wife restructuring our finances. "We're transitioning accounts," I explained, my hospital administrator tone unwavering. "Please flag these for manual payment review." The reps agreed, noting delinquency risks if unresolved in 30 days. I smiled, knowing David's pride would crumble when his cars were repossessed. The offshore account was the riskiest. Direct access was impossible without his biometric login, but I had a workaround. Using his email credentials, I sent a concerned spouse inquiry to the Cayman Bank, attaching our marriage certificate and a forged signature sample from his tax documents. "I suspect unauthorized transfers," I wrote, requesting a temporary hold pending verification. It was a long shot, but the bank's auto-reply confirmed a 72-hour freeze for review. That was enough to rattle David's cage. The Belltown condo and our Redmond home's second mortgage, taken out without my consent, were my final targets. I called the mortgage bank, reporting fraud. "My signature was forged on this loan," I said, emailing proof of my non-involvement. The rep launched an immediate investigation, freezing further draws. For the condo, I contacted the title company, flagging it as a marital asset under dispute. These moves didn't seize the properties, but tied them up in legal knots, ensuring David couldn't liquidate them behind my back. I also weaponized his affair. I compiled a digital folder, Lauren's flirty emails, hotel receipts, the rooftop photo, and saved it as leverage. If David fought dirty, I'd send it to his investors, conservative tech moguls who'd recoil at a cheating CEO. His startup's funding depended on their trust, and I held the match to burn it down. By 3 p.m., my checklist was complete. David's cards were frozen, his accounts redirected, his offshore millions on hold, his cars and properties flagged. I'd moved $200,000 to my account, enough for Claire's treatment and a new start. Every action was legal, backed by me as advice and my evidence, but it was also a declaration of war. I saved confirmation emails, recorded call details, and backed up screenshots ready for any legal counterattack. I leaned back, a strange calm washing over me. Satisfaction pulsed through me, but so did grief, for the marriage I'd believed in, for the years I'd lost. I ordered takeout from a nearby faux shop, paying cash, and ate in silence, the motel's hum grounding me. I called Harborview. Claire was stable, her next surgery scheduled. "We'll get her that treatment," I whispered to myself, a promise. At 6:17 p.m., my phone exploded with David's text. "What the hell, Em? My cards aren't working." Then calls, voicemails, his voice rising from confusion to fury. "You're insane. Call me now." I let them pile up, each one a sign he'd felt my strike. At 8:30, he called from Lauren's number, his cards likely declined for a hotel phone. I didn't answer, but I read his final text. "This is a mistake. You'll regret it." I wouldn't. I'd leveled the playing field, turned his control into chaos. The confrontation was coming, but I was ready. Claire's life, my dignity, my future, they were worth fighting for. As I closed my laptop, the Seattle skyline glittered through the motel window, a reminder that I was no longer caged. David had underestimated me, and now he'd pay the price. David's return from San Francisco was a storm waiting to break, and I was ready to meet it head-on. By Sunday night, his text had escalated from fury to desperation, his voicemails a mix of threats and pleas. "Fix this, Em, or I'll sue you for everything," one hissed. Another, softer. "Let's talk, babe. We can work this out." I ignored them all, staying in my motel near Harborview, my laptop and evidence folder beside me like armor. Claire's condition was stable, but her $50,000 treatment loomed, and I wasn't backing down. We agreed to meet Monday morning at our Redmond home, neutral ground for a war neither of us could avoid. I arrived at 10 a.m., dressed in a sharp blazer and heels, my CFO armor, carrying a manila folder of my leverage. Screenshots of Lauren's emails, offshore account statements, forged mortgage documents. David was pacing by the fireplace, eyes bloodshot, his usual polish frayed. He barely recognized the woman before him, not the compliant wife who'd begged for grocery money, but a warrior who'd frozen his world. "You've made a mess," he started, aiming for control, but landing on petulance. "My cards are declined, the bank's investigating our mortgage, my investors are asking questions. Undo it, Em, and we'll forget this happened." I sat in an armchair, placing my folder on the coffee table, my gaze steady. "I'm not undoing anything. I am ready to negotiate," I said, my voice calm but iron. "You've stolen from me. This is illegal." I opened the folder, sliding out the screenshot of Lauren's email, her "Love L" scrawled above the rooftop photo. "Is it as illegal as hiding $4.2 million offshore? Or forging my signature on a mortgage? Or funding your affair with Lauren while I couldn't buy medicine?" His face drained of color, his bravado crumbling as I laid out more evidence, hotel receipts, cash withdrawal records, investor emails hinting at his shady transfers. "You've been spying," he spat, sinking onto the sofa. "Protecting myself," I corrected. "You controlled every dollar I earned, David. Now I'm taking back what's mine. Shall we discuss divorce terms, or should I email this folder to your investors? They'd love to know their CEO's priorities." The threat was surgical. His investors, old-school tech titans, valued family man optics. An affair with his COO, plus financial irregularities, would tank his startup. He leaned forward, voice low. "What do you want?" For 2 hours we battled. I laid out my terms. Immediate restoration of my name on all joint accounts, redirection of my full salary to my Bellevue account, a 50-50 split of all assets, including the offshore account, and $50,000 by noon for Claire's treatment. In return, I'd keep his affair private, unfreeze his accounts post-divorce, and drop the mortgage fraud probe if he refinanced it out of my name. Mia had vetted every demand, ensuring they were airtight under Washington law.
David pushed back, offering me the Redmond house but no cash. "You don't need half M, be reasonable." I countered with the condo deed he'd hidden. "Reasonable like hiding a $2 million property? Try again." He accused me of blackmail. I reminded him I'd only taken my legal share. "You built this cage," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You thought I'd stay trapped forever. Did you really think I wouldn't fight for Claire, for myself?" By noon, he caved, his ego bruised but his options gone. He called his lawyer, initiating divorce proceedings, and transferred $50,000 to my account with a memo for Claire's treatment. I watched the notification ping, relief flooding me. Claire would walk again. David's lawyer emailed a draft agreement, which Mia reviewed, confirming my name was back on accounts and my salary redirected. The offshore account would be split in court, but my evidence ensured transparency. The confrontation wasn't just a win, it was a rebirth. I left our house, the air lighter, the Seattle clouds parting for the first time in days. David tried to claw back control over the next week, calling the police to claim theft, only to be told it was a civil matter. He tried emergency loans, but his frozen accounts blocked him. By Wednesday, he was silent, reality sinking in. I'd outplayed him. The divorce took 9 months, a slog of depositions and financial disclosures. David fought for the Belltown condo, which I let him keep in exchange for $2.1 million from the offshore account, wired to my new investment portfolio. The Redmond mortgage was refinanced in his name, freeing me from liability. I walked away with $3.8 million in assets, my salary fully mine, and no trace of David's control.
Claire's treatment started a week after our showdown, and by spring, she was walking with a cane, her laugh back in full force. I moved into a cozy Capitol Hill apartment, furnishing it with mid-century pieces that screamed me. No echoes of David's minimalist prison. Each purchase, from a $200 lamp to a $5,000 sofa, was a choice I made without fear, a reclaiming of my autonomy. The emotional scars lingered. I'd flinch when swiping my card, half expecting a decline. Nightmares of David's voice, "Another latte, Em?" woke me at 3 a.m. But therapy helped, and so did Claire, who reminded me daily, "You saved me, Em. You saved yourself." I rebuilt my friendships, hosting Mia for wine nights, apologizing for my absence. They welcomed me back, no questions asked. David's world unraveled quietly. Lauren left him 6 months later, citing trust issues, and his startup lost a key investor, rumors swirling about his ethics. I didn't gloat. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about my life, my terms. As I stood in my apartment, the Seattle skyline glittering outside, I knew the real victory wasn't the money. It was the woman I'd become, unafraid, unbroken, unstoppable. The fight was over, but my story was just beginning. Winning my freedom from David wasn't the end. It was the launchpad for a life I never dared imagine. 9 months after our showdown, I stood in my Capitol Hill apartment, the Seattle skyline sparkling through floor-to-ceiling windows, and felt something I hadn't in years: peace. The $3.8 million divorce settlement was nice, sure, but the real prize was my autonomy. Every choice, from my morning coffee to my 401k contributions, was mine again. I was Emily Harper, 38, CFO, survivor, and, finally, free. Rebuilding wasn't easy. Those first months, I'd freeze when swiping my card at Target, braced for a decline that never came. I'd wake up gasping, dreaming David was grilling me over a $10 Uber ride. My therapist called it financial PTSD, the scars of years under his thumb. But each independent decision, a $300 splurge on a leather jacket, a $5,000 donation to a women's shelter, chipped away at the fear. I furnished my apartment with color. Teal throw pillows, a mustard yellow sofa, art from Pike Place Market. No more sterile grays of David's Redmond prison. This was my home, my rules. Claire's recovery was my anchor. By spring, she was back to teaching music, her cane a badge of her fight. We'd meet for brunch at Odd Fellows Cafe, splitting avocado toast and laughing like kids again. "You saved me, Em." She'd squeeze my hand. I'd shake my head. We saved each other. Her accident was the spark that lit my rebellion, and her strength reminded me why I fought. But the past wasn't done with me. A year after the divorce, I got an email from Lauren, David's former COO and mistress. "I'm trapped," she wrote. "He's doing to me what he did to you. Every dollar monitored, every choice his." I should have felt smug, but instead, I felt a pang of empathy. I met her at a quiet Fremont coffee shop, expecting the polished seductress I'd imagined. Instead, I found a scared woman, 29, her confidence drained. "I thought I was different," she whispered. "Now I can't even buy groceries without his app pinging." I slid a notebook across the table. "Here's how you get out." Step by step, I shared my playbook. Secret accounts, legal rights, evidence gathering. 6 months later, Lauren left David, taking half their assets despite his threats. She texted me, "Thank you, Emily. I'm free." Helping her closed a wound I didn't know was still open. David's control wasn't my fault, it was his pattern, and I'd broken it for us both. That victory sparked something bigger. At Puget Sound Medical Center, I pitched a financial empowerment program for abuse survivors, inspired by my support group idea. We launched Freedom Funds, partnering with the local credit union to offer safe accounts and with nonprofits for emergency grants. I led workshops, sharing my story, declined cards, hidden millions, my motel room coup. Women nodded, their eyes reflecting my pain, then lit up as I showed them how to reclaim their power. Each new account opened, each woman who left her abuser
felt like my triumph too. 2 years post-divorce, I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. I run marathons along Lake Washington, host game nights with Mia and Claire, and travel solo to places David never let me go. Paris, Tokyo, New Orleans. I'm dating again, cautiously, but my heart's open. Most importantly, I'm building a legacy. Freedom Funds is expanding statewide, and I'm writing a book about financial abuse, hoping to reach women still trapped in silence. If my story hits home, know this: you're not alone and you're not powerless. Financial abuse thrives in the dark, but one step, a secret account, a hotline call, a friend's ear can light your way out. My path was messy, but it led here, to a life I love. Yours can too. Hey, if this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories of survival and empowerment, and let's keep this conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What's your next step toward freedom? I'm rooting for you.